The Brawl Nebula's grand coliseum hung in the void like a massive, gleaming gyroscope, a sprawling network of battle arenas, floating in zero-gravity rings around a pulsing core of exotic matter. From a distance, it resembled a jeweled pendant, but up close, the shimmering force fields contained everything from acid pits to gravity wells, each arena designed to test the galaxy's most formidable warriors. Jack's wildcard, Reyes, pressed his face against the viewport of their dilapidated shuttle as they approached the docking bay. His calloused fingers tapped nervously against the reinforced glass, leaving smudges that his exosuit's sleeve couldn't quite wipe clean. "It's bigger than the vids showed," he muttered, squinting at the massive structure. "Think we're in over our heads?" Mira Chan, standing behind him with arms crossed, snorted. "We were in over our heads the moment Earth signed the entry forms. Wildcard. But since when has that stopped us?" The former soldier's face was a roadmap of scars, one slicing through her right eyebrow, another along her jawline, earned during Earth's desperate defense against the Orion mercenary fleet 5 years back. Before humanity even knew there was a galaxy full of advanced civilizations watching them. "Fair point." Jax grinned, the expression lighting up his otherwise unremarkable face. At 32, he was neither especially tall nor muscular, just wiry and quick. His most striking feature was the network of fine burn scars tracing up his forearms, the mark of an engineer who learned through painful trial and error. From the back of the shuttle came a metallic clang, followed by colorful cursing. "Dex, you okay back there?" Jax called. Dex Tinker. Malin emerged from the equipment hold, wiping lubricant from his hands onto his already stained coveralls, the youngest of their trio at 25. He had the permanently wide-eyed look of someone who had seen too many explosions up close. "Just securing your backup power cells," he said, pushing his safety goggles up into his wild mop of curly hair. "If they'd rattled loose during entry, we'd be scraping you off the inside of that fancy exosuit." Mira moved to the pilot's seat as the docking procedure began. "Remember the brief. Earth barely got fusion tech working 20 years ago. To these people, we're primitives who stumbled onto the galactic stage. They accepted our tournament entry as a diplomatic courtesy. Nothing more." "Right," Jax nodded, watching as alien vessels of every conceivable configuration floated in neat, ordered patterns around the Colosseum. "We're the galaxy's newest joke." Dex clapped him on the shoulder. "Until you start winning." The landing bay was a riot of sound and color as representatives from hundreds of worlds mingled, argued, and traded. Delegates in ceremonial armor stood alongside tech crews maintaining sleek battle mechs. Hovering translation drones buzzed overhead, their soft blue lights creating a starfield effect across the cavernous space. What caught Jax's attention, however, was how conversations quieted as their small team made their way through the crowd. Mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Appendages of various sorts gestured in their direction. Translation drones worked overtime as comments filtered through. "Barely have warp capability. Still using combustion engines on their homeworld, Heard they only achieved unified planetary governance 50 years ago." Jax felt his neck heating up, but kept his eyes forward. Their assigned quarters were Spartan but functional, 3 sleep pods, a small common area, and, most importantly, a workshop space where Dex immediately began unpacking their equipment. "Don't let them get to you," Mira said, noticing Jax's tightened jaw. "That's exactly what they want." "I know." Jax took a deep breath. "I just wish we had something more impressive than this." He tapped the exosuit hanging in its maintenance cradle. Compared to the gleaming battle armors they'd passed in the bay, Earth's contribution looked like a junkyard project, which, to be fair, it partially was. The wildcard suit was a patchwork creation, military-grade servos salvaged from decommissioned defense units, custom-printed circuit pathways, and a power core that Jax had personally modified to push well beyond safety recommendations. What it lacked in elegance, it made up for in unpredictability. Their orientation briefing came via hologram, a towering 8-foot alien with iridescent scales and 4 primary arms. 2 secondary arms remained folded at its sides, a mark of status among its kind. "I am Overseer Kor Val," the being announced, voice resonating with harmonics that made Jax's teeth vibrate. "For 10 millennia, I have presided over the grand tournament. You stand among the elite, warriors whose ancestors were battling for glory when your species was discovering how to make fire." The hologram's upper eyes seemed to focus directly on the Earth delegation. "Some of you are here by right of combat lineage, others by council appointment, and a select few," a pause, heavy with disdain, "by diplomatic accommodation." Dex muttered something under his breath that made Mira stifle a laugh. "Preliminary qualifiers begin tomorrow. You will be evaluated and sorted into appropriate combat brackets. Fight with honor. Die with dignity. The Brawl Nebula awaits." The hologram flickered out. "Charming fellow," Jax said. "He's won more death matches than any champion in the last 5 centuries," Mira replied, scrolling through her datapad. "Retired undefeated to become Overseer. Not someone we want to antagonize." "Too late for that," Dex chimed in from where he was soldering a delicate component. "We antagonized him by showing up." Sleep came fitfully that night. Jax's dreams filled with acid pits and the laughter of alien spectators. The qualifier was supposed to be simple, a standardized test of combat readiness against automated defense systems, a formality for established contenders, a brutal weeding out for newcomers like Earth. Jax stood in the staging area, letting Dex make final adjustments to the exosuit's neural interface. Around them, other competitors prepared with quiet confidence or ritualistic precision. A silicon-based warrior meticulously polished its crystalline extrusions. A collective of gas-phase entities pulsed in synchronized patterns within their containment field. No one paid attention to the human until it was his turn. The testing chamber was a plain white dome with gleaming silver spheres embedded in the walls, ceiling, and floor, defense drones that would activate in randomized patterns. Competitors needed to neutralize or evade them for 3 minutes. Simple enough, until the difficulty settings were announced. "Earth representative," came the automated voice. "Calibration set to grade 3. Murmurs rippled through the observation gallery. Grade 3 was typically reserved for mid-tier warriors, not first-time competitors from backwater planets. "There's been a mistake," Jax said, voice carrying through the chamber's acoustics. "First-time entrants start at grade 1. A new voice responded. Deeper. Resonant. "Overseer Kor. Are you requesting special consideration? Earth representative? Perhaps you find our standard testing intimidating." More murmurs, now accompanied by the clicks and whistles of alien amusement. Jax felt heat rising to his face. "No, sir, just clarifying." Then clarification provided, grade 3, begin. The silver spheres detached from their housings with an ominous hum. Jax's suit sensors picked up energy signatures building across the chamber, far more powerful than the briefing materials had indicated for grade 1 or even 2. "Wild card. You're being set up." Mira's voice came through his comms. "They want a spectacle." "Then let's give them one," Jax muttered, activating his suit's full power suite. The first attack came as a coordinated barrage, energy bolts from 3 directions simultaneously. Jax's reflexes, enhanced by the suit, let him dodge 2, but the third struck his left shoulder. The impact dampeners absorbed most of the blow, but the force still sent him staggering. "Power surge in Sector 5. Dex's voice, calm despite the situation. "Compensating." The exosuit's displays flickered, then stabilized. Jax had seconds to recover before the next assault. This time, the spheres projecting energy tethers that would immobilize on contact. Instead of dodging, Jax did something unexpected. He rushed directly at the nearest sphere. "What are you doing?" Mira hissed in his ear. Just before impact, Jax triggered the emergency overload on his suit's right gauntlet, a modification he'd installed without telling either of his teammates. The resulting electromagnetic pulse wasn't elegant, but it fried the targeting systems of every sphere within a 3-meter radius. "Creating chaos," he replied, grinning behind his visor as he spun to face the remaining threats. The spectator gallery had gone silent. This was not how qualification runs typically proceeded. For the next 2 minutes, Jax employed every jury-rigged trick his suit offered. When energy nets deployed from the ceiling, he used his boot's repulsion field, designed for zero-G maneuvering, to slide along the wall at impossible angles. When concussive blasts threatened to knock him unconscious, he activated the suit's sensory dampeners, briefly sacrificing spatial awareness for protection. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't elegant. But when the final buzzer sounded, Jax remained standing, if somewhat unsteadily, amid a field of disabled defense spheres. Silence hung in the air for several heartbeats before the observation gallery erupted in a cacophony of alien voices. Some sounded outraged, others merely confused, but a few, Jax was certain, showed reluctant appreciation. Overseer Kor's voice cut through the din. An unusual approach. Earth representative. Jax looked up at the observation window where the massive alien stood. All 6 arms now unfolded in what he assumed was a gesture of surprise or perhaps displeasure. "We humans are full of surprises, Overseer." "Indeed," the word dripped with condescension. "Your qualification is acknowledged. You will be assigned to Arena Gamma 7 for your first match." As Jax exited the chamber, Mira and Dex were waiting, their expressions a mix of relief and concern. "What's Arena Gamma 7? Jax asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Mira's face darkened. "The acid moat pit. It's where they send competitors expected to provide a humiliating spectacle." "Great," Jax sighed, letting Dex help him out of the damaged exosuit. "How long do we have?" 48 hours, Dex replied, already examining the scorched gauntlet. "And we've got work to do." The next 2 days passed in a blur of repairs, modifications, and strategic planning, while Dex worked on adapting the exosuit for corrosive environment protection. Mira analyzed footage of previous matches in Gamma 7. "Your opponent is a Vrexian acid walker," she explained, projecting holograms of a 6-limbed creature that seemed to glide through caustic pools as easily as humans move through air. "They've won their last 7 matches by dissolving their opponent's armor and then, dissolving their opponent's." Jax studied the creature's movements. "Weaknesses? They're slow on solid ground, and their sensing organs can't distinguish between different types of chemical signatures." A slow smile spread across Jax's face. "Dex, do we still have those mineral compounds from the asteroid mining project?" Dex looked up from his work, a similar grin forming. "The ones that create that horrible sulfur smell when mixed? I thought you said never to unseal those in enclosed spaces again." "I'm making an exception." When match day arrived, the stands surrounding Arena Gamma 7 were packed. Word had spread about the unorthodox human qualifier, and spectators were eager to see the upstart put in his place. The arena itself was a sunken pit filled with a bubbling, greenish liquid that occasionally sent noxious plumes of vapor into the air. Narrow platforms of heat-resistant material provided minimal solid footing. As Jax was escorted to his entry point, a tall, thin alien with compound eyes approached. The official translator drone hovering nearby identified him as Referee Jur. "Human," the 4-armed official said, mandibles clicking rhythmically. "I must verify your understanding of the rules. No projectile weapons, no outside assistance once the match begins. Victory by incapacitation or surrender," Jax recited, checking the seals on his modified exosuit. Jur's head tilted. "You have studied our ways. Just enough to stay alive. The referee's mandibles clicked faster, a sound the translator didn't interpret, but which Jack suspected might be amusement. Most who enter Gamma 7 do not concern themselves with post-match procedures. A pause. It will be interesting to see your approach. With that cryptic comment, Jur moved away to prepare the arena. The crowd's roar became deafening as Jack stepped onto the entry platform. Across the acid pit, his opponent emerged, the Vrexian sliding onto the surface of the caustic pool as if it were merely a pleasant bath. Its skin rippled with iridescent patterns that Mira had identified as both communication and a warning display. Overseer Kor's voice boomed across the arena. Today, we witness the first match of Earth's representative. A pause, filled with murmurs from the crowd. May it provide educational entertainment. Laughter rippled through the spectators. The starting signal flashed, and the Vrexian immediately began gliding toward Jax, leaving ripples in the acid bath. Suit integrity holding. Dex's voice came through the comms, but I wouldn't recommend a swim. Wasn't planning on it, Jax replied, carefully navigating to the nearest platform while keeping his eyes on the approaching creature. The Vrexian shot forward suddenly, one limb extended to splash acid toward Jax. The droplets hit his suit with a hiss, immediately beginning to eat through the outer layer. Outer shell compromised, Dex warned. Secondary layer still intact, but you've got maybe 5 direct hits before breach. Jax didn't respond, too focused on maintaining his balance while dodging another splash attack. The platforms were slick, designed to be treacherous. One misstep would send him into the pit. The crowd was getting restless, expecting a quick and humiliating defeat. Exactly what Kor had planned. Time to change the game, Jax muttered. He reached to his belt and unclipped 2 specially designed canisters. What are you doing? Mira's voice was tense. Creating chaos. With a quick twist, Jax activated the first canister and tossed it into the acid bath several meters from the Vrexian. The chemical reaction was immediate and spectacular, the mineral compounds reacting with the acid to create a thick, noxious cloud of sulfurous gas. The Vrexian paused, its sensing organs clearly confused by the new chemical signatures. The second canister followed, landing on the opposite side, creating another cloud. The suit filters won't handle that for long, Dex warned. They don't need to. Jax had been studying the arena layout obsessively. While most competitors focused on the acid pit itself, he had noticed something else. The environmental control systems that maintained the acid's temperature and concentration. They were partially exposed near the referee's platform. With the Vrexian momentarily disoriented by the chemical clouds, Jax made his move. He leapt from platform to platform with precision that surprised even himself. The exosuit's enhanced reflexes compensating for the treacherous footing. What is the human doing? The confused murmur spread through the crowd as Jax reached the edge of the pit nearest the control panel. The Vrexian, sensing his movement, began gliding toward him again, but the creature was cautious now, uncertain of these new tactics. Jax reached the panel and did something no previous competitor had attempted. He began rewiring it. 30 seconds before the suit's outer layer fails completely. Dex warned. Almost there. Jax's fingers flew across the exposed circuitry, bypassing safety protocols and rerouting power. The Vrexian was meters away now, rising partially from the acid in preparation for a final, devastating attack. Jax, Mira's voice was urgent. Done. With a final connection, Jax triggered his makeshift override. The effect was immediate. The temperature regulators for the acid pit reversed, rapidly cooling sections of the caustic bath. The Vrexian shrieked as the acid around it began to solidify, trapping its lower limbs. The creature thrashed, but each movement only served to entrap it further as more of the pit cooled and hardened. The crowd fell silent, then erupted in a mixture of outrage and astonishment. Referee Jur approached the edge of the arena, all four arms raised in the official gesture requesting clarification. Human, this strategy is unprecedented, but not against the rules, Jax replied, his breath heavy from exertion. No projectile weapons, no outside assistance. I simply adapted the environment. The referee's compound eyes studied him for several long moments before turning to where the Vrexian remained trapped, unable to move or attack. The match is concluded. Victory to Earth. The announcement was met with stunned silence, then a wave of buzzing, clicking, and whistling that the translator struggled to keep up with. Most of it seemed to be disbelief or protest, but Jax caught snippets of what might have been approval from some sections. Overseer Kor's voice cut through the tumult, barely contained anger vibrating in its harmonics. The victory is acknowledged. The human will advance to the next round. As Jax was escorted from the arena, he caught sight of Kor watching him from the Overseer's box. All 6 arms were now unfolded, hands clenched in what could only be interpreted as fury. I think we got his attention, Jax murmured. That was the idea, wasn't it? Mira replied, helping him remove the damaged exosuit. But now we have a bigger problem. What's that? Your next opponent. They've assigned you to face the Psychic Hydra champion. Dex, who had been examining the acid damage to the suit, looked up sharply. That's a jump of 3 competition tiers. They're not even pretending to follow protocol anymore. Jax sank onto a bench, suddenly feeling the full weight of the day's exertion. How long do we have? 3 days. Mira's expression was grim. And we need every minute. The preparation for the Psychic Hydra match was even more intense than for the Vrexian. This opponent presented an entirely different challenge. While the Acid Walker had been a physical threat, the Hydra attacked primarily through psychic assaults that could incapacitate even well-protected minds. The good news, Mira explained as they reviewed footage of previous matches, is that the Hydra's physical form is vulnerable when it's channeling psychic energy. The bad news. Let me guess. Jax interrupted. I have to get close enough to exploit that vulnerability while it's trying to turn my brain to mush. Precisely. Dex had been unusually quiet, working on something in the corner of their workshop. When he finally looked up, his expression was a mixture of excitement and apprehension. I think I've got something, he said, holding up what looked like a modified neural interface. It won't block the psychic attacks completely, but it might create enough feedback to buy you time. Jax studied the device skeptically. What's the catch? It might also fry your central nervous system if the power regulation fails. Lovely. Despite the risks, the device was their best hope. They spent the next 2 days integrating it with the repaired exosuit and running simulations. Mira, meanwhile, developed tactical approaches based on the Hydra's known fighting patterns. By the time match day arrived, Jax felt marginally prepared, which, given the circumstances, was the best they could hope for. Arena Delta 4 was a stark contrast to the acid pit. A pristine white circular platform floated in what appeared to be empty space, though Jax knew it was actually a sophisticated holographic environment designed to minimize distractions during psychic combat. The crowd was significantly larger this time, word having spread about the humans' unexpected victory. Jax caught glimpses of wagering happening throughout the stands, likely heavily favoring the Hydra. Referee Jur approached again for the pre-match verification, his mandibles clicking in what Jax now recognized as a greeting. Human, you survived Gamma 7. Surprised? Intrigued, the referee corrected. Your match has been designated special interest by the Overseer himself. That didn't sound promising. What does that mean exactly? It means, Jur explained, voice lowered, that traditional progression protocols have been suspended. The Overseer wishes to test your adaptability by throwing me to the Hydra. Jur's compound eyes blinked in sequence. You understand our ways better than expected. As the referee moved away, Jax caught a subtle gesture from one of his secondary arms, a movement that wasn't necessary for balance or function. It almost seemed like encouragement? No time to puzzle over alien body language. The entry portal was opening, and on the opposite side of the arena, his opponent emerged. The psychic Hydra champion was both beautiful and terrifying. A central torso of iridescent blue scales supported 5 serpentine necks, each ending in a head with luminous eyes. The creature moved with fluid grace, its lower body sliding across the platform like liquid mercury. "Begin," came the command, and the Hydra immediately went still, all 10 eyes focusing on Jax. The psychic assault hit like a tidal wave. Even with Dex's protective device, Jax felt his vision blur and his thoughts scatter. Images flooded his mind, his worst fears, painful memories, moments of doubt and failure. "Neural interface holding." Dex's voice seemed to come from very far away. "But readings are spiking. You need to move." Through sheer force of will, Jax commanded his limbs to function. The exosuit responded sluggishly as he began circling the arena's perimeter, trying to maintain distance while he adjusted to the psychic pressure. The Hydra tracked his movement, the intensity of its attack increasing. Jax stumbled, nearly falling as a particularly vivid hallucination of plummeting through space without a suit overtook his senses. "The interface is overheating," Dex warned. 2 minutes maximum before failure." Jax knew he couldn't win in a prolonged battle. The Hydra was too powerful, too experienced. He needed to create an advantage, quickly. The arena's design offered little to work with, intentionally minimalist to prevent physical combat from overshadowing the psychic duel. But minimalist didn't mean featureless. The platform itself had embedded lighting that responded to movement, providing visual tracking for spectators. "Dex," Jax managed through gritted teeth. "The arena lights. Can you access their control frequency?" A pause. "Maybe. What are you thinking? Remember that nightclub in Singapore? The one with the synchronized light system that gave everyone migraines?" A moment of silence, then, "That's insane. It might work." While Dex worked on hijacking the frequency, Jax had to keep moving, keep fighting the psychic onslaught. Each step was agony, each thought a battle to maintain. The Hydra, sensing weakness, began to advance. Its physical form was less threatening than its mental attacks, but the creature was still powerful, muscular coils capable of crushing bones. "Almost there," Dex murmured. 10 seconds. One of the Hydra's heads lunged forward, fangs bared. Jax barely managed to dodge, the exosuit's servos whining with the effort. "Now," Dex shouted. Jax slammed his palm onto the platform and activated the signal relay they'd built into his gauntlet. Instantly, the arena's lighting system went haywire, pulsing in rapid, jarring patterns specifically designed to create visual feedback loops. For most beings, it would be disorienting. For a psychically projecting entity with heightened visual sensitivity like the Hydra, it was devastating. All 5 heads reared back simultaneously, the psychic attack faltering as the creature tried to process the visual assault. Its mental link with Jax weakened just enough for him to regain full control of his faculties. He didn't waste the opportunity. Charging forward while the Hydra was disoriented, Jax activated the exosuit's power boost. His right fist, reinforced with makeshift shock absorbers, connected with the creature's central torso with enough force to send it skidding backward. The crowd erupted in surprised exclamations. Physical attacks rarely succeeded against psychic opponents of this caliber. The Hydra recovered quickly, its mental assault resuming, but with less coordination. The lighting disruption had created a weakness in its otherwise impenetrable defense. "The neural interface is failing," Dex warned. 30 seconds max." Jax knew he needed to end this now. Drawing on everything he had left, he pushed through the renewed psychic pressure and launched himself at the Hydra again. This time, Instead of a direct attack, he slid beneath the creature's coils and activated the final modification they'd prepared, an electromagnetic pulse directed upward through the platform itself. The pulse wasn't powerful enough to damage the arena's systems permanently, but it created a momentary disruption in the energy field that maintained the platform's stability. The brief fluctuation, combined with the continuing light show, completely shattered the Hydra's concentration. All 5 heads thrashed wildly as its psychic projection collapsed. Before it could recover, Jax delivered a series of precise strikes to the neural clusters Mira had identified along its sign. The Hydra's movements became uncoordinated, then sluggish. Finally, it collapsed in a heap of coils, all 10 eyes dimming as it slipped into unconsciousness. Silence fell over the arena, broken only by Jax's heavy breathing. Then, slowly, a ripple of sound began to build. Not cheers, exactly, but a collective exhalation of disbelief. Referee Jur approached, all 4 arms extended in the formal verification gesture. After confirming the Hydra's state, he turned to Jax. "Victory to Earth," he announced, voice carrying across the now hushed arena. "The human advances?" This time, there was no immediate outburst from the crowd. Instead, a low murmur spread through the stands, the sound of thousands of beings reassessing their assumptions. Overseer Kor's voice, when it finally came, was controlled but tight with suppressed emotion. "The humans' victory is acknowledged. Preparations for the quarter-final match will begin immediately." As Jax was escorted from the arena, exhausted but triumphant, he caught sight of something unexpected. Small groups of spectators making gestures of respect or appreciation as he passed. Not many, but enough to notice. "We're gaining supporters," Mira observed quietly. "Or they're just excited about winning their bets," Jax replied, though he couldn't suppress a small smile. Back in their quarters, Dex carefully removed the smoking neural interface. "This is completely fried, like beyond salvageable." "Can you build another one?" Jax asked, wincing as the medical scanner Mira ran over him highlighted several strained muscles and minor neural inflammation. Dex shook his head. "Not in time, and I used our last specialized components." "Then we adapt. What's next?" Mira's expression was grave as she checked her datapad. "The gravity-born warlord. Arena Alpha 1. Jax let out a low whistle. "They're not even pretending to follow the tier system anymore, are they?" "No," she confirmed. "Kor is escalating. He wants to make an example of you." "How long?" 48 hours. Jax closed his eyes briefly, feeling every bruise and strain. When he opened them again, his resolve had hardened. "Then we better get to work." The next 2 days were a blur of preparation, innovation, and increasingly desperate measures. The gravity-born warlord was a legendary competitor, a massive being from a high-gravity world who manipulated localized gravitational fields as easily as humans use their hands. With their specialized components depleted and time running short, the Earth team had to get creative. Dex cannibalized parts from their shuttle's non-essential systems. Mira called in favors from competitors she'd befriended, acquiring materials through a network of unofficial trades that skirted tournament regulations without technically breaking them. By the time match day arrived, they had cobbled together a modified version of the exosuit that might, with an enormous amount of luck, give Jax a fighting chance. Arena Alpha 1 was the Coliseum's premier battle venue, a massive dome with tiered seating that accommodated over 50,000 spectators. Every seat was filled, and the energy was palpable as Jax entered through the competitor's tunnel. This time, there was no pre-match visit from referee Jur. Instead, a junior official delivered the standard verification with clipped efficiency. The message was clear. Jax was now considered a genuine threat, not an amusing diversion. The gravity-born warlord lived up to its fearsome reputation, standing nearly 3 meters tall, Its boulder-like body was covered in crystalline growths that pulsed with inner light. When it moved, the very air seemed to warp around it. "Begin," came the command, and immediately Jax felt his body grow heavy, as if his mass had doubled in an instant. "Localized gravity field," Dex warned through the comms. "He's focusing it on you directly." Jax struggled to remain upright as the pressure increased. The exosuit's servos whined in protest, pushed beyond their design limits. Around him, small objects, dust particles, tiny fragments of the arena floor, began to orbit his position as the warlord's power created a miniature gravitational vortex. The crowd watched in fascinated silence as Jax was forced to one knee, then both, the inexorable pressure building. "Can't move," he gasped. "The suit's power core is redlining," Dex reported, tension evident in his voice. "If you don't break free soon—" "I know." Jax's mind raced, searching for options. Direct confrontation was impossible. The warlord could simply increase the gravitational field until his bones shattered. What he needed was a distraction, something to break the warlord's concentration. The arena itself offered little help, a circular floor of polished stone with minimal features. The environmental controls, however— "Dex," Jax managed through gritted teeth. "The arena control hub, upper level, north quadrant. Can you see it?" A pause. "Yes, what about it? Remember how we rerouted power in the acid pit? Same principle, bigger scale." "You're insane," Dex replied, but Jax could hear the sound of rapid typing. "The security on Alpha 1 is way more sophisticated, but not impenetrable." Mira cut in. "I've been studying their protocols. The primary systems are locked down tight, but the diagnostic port for the gravity stabilizers has a back door for maintenance." It was a desperate plan, but Jax was running out of options, and oxygen, as the increasing gravity compressed his chest. "Do it," he wheezed. While his team worked furiously to hack into the arena systems, Jax had to stay alive. The warlord had begun advancing toward him, each ponderous step sending shockwaves through the floor. The creature seemed to be savoring its victory, prolonging the match for the crowd's entertainment. "Almost there," Mira reported. 10 seconds. The warlord now loomed over Jax, its crystalline growths pulsing with increasing intensity. The gravity well around Jax deepened, and he felt something crack in his left arm, the exosuit's support structure beginning to fail. "Now!" Dex shouted. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a subsonic rumble that Jax felt more than heard, the arena's gravity stabilizers, designed to maintain standard conditions despite the various competitors' abilities, suddenly reversed polarity. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The carefully calibrated gravity field that maintained the arena's environment inverted, creating a momentary zero-G pocket before compensatory systems could engage. Everything not secured to the floor began to float, including both competitors. For Jax, trained in zero-G operations during Earth's asteroid mining initiatives, the sudden weightlessness was a familiar environment. For the warlord, whose powers were fundamentally tied to gravitational manipulation, it was momentarily disorienting. The creature's concentration broke, its hold on Jax disappearing as it tried to re-establish control over its own massive body now drifting upward. Jax didn't waste the opportunity. Using the exosuit's maneuvering thrusters, originally designed for spacewalks, he propelled himself toward the arena wall. Pushing off with his legs, he launched back toward the disoriented warlord like a missile. The impact was bone-jarring, even in zero-G. Jax slammed into the crystalline growths on the warlord's chest, the force sending them both tumbling through the air. 20 seconds before emergency systems restore normal gravity, Mira warned. It was all the time Jax needed. Grappling with the massive creature, he maneuvered himself around to its back, where Mira's analysis had indicated the central neural cluster would be located. The crystalline formations were thinner there, pulsing with energy as the warlord tried to reassert its gravitational control. Using the last reserves of the exosuit's power, Jax activated the modified electromagnetic disruptor they'd salvaged from the shuttle's navigation system. At point-blank range, the pulse sent a targeted shock directly into the warlord's neural pathways. The effect was instantaneous. The creature convulsed, its crystalline growths dimming as neural activity was temporarily scrambled. As emergency systems restored normal gravity, both competitors fell to the arena floor, the warlord landing with a thunderous impact that cracked the stone. Jax managing a somewhat more controlled descent, using the last gasp of his maneuvering thrusters. For several tense moments, neither moved. Then, slowly, Jax pushed himself to his feet. The exosuit was barely functional. Power core depleted and structural integrity compromised, but it had served its purpose. The warlord remained motionless, its crystalline formations dim and lifeless. The silence in the arena was absolute. 50,000 beings held their breath as referee Jur approached to verify the outcome. After a thorough examination of the fallen warlord, the official turned to face the audience. The gravity-born warlord is incapacitated. Victory to Earth. This time. The crowd's response was immediate and thunderous, a mixture of disbelief, outrage, and growing admiration. Betting pools collapsed as fortunes were lost and won. Representatives from worlds that had previously ignored Earth's delegation now watched with intense interest. Overseer Kor's voice, when it finally cut through the tumult, vibrated with barely contained fury. The human advances to the semi-finals. As Jax limped from the arena, supported by Mira and Dex, he noticed something remarkable. Beings from dozens of worlds were making gestures of respect or appreciation. No longer isolated pockets, but significant portions of the crowd. "We're changing minds," Mira observed. "And making enemies," Dex added, nodding toward where Overseer Kor stood watching their exit. All 6 arms rigid with tension. Jax managed a tired smile. "Good. I'd hate for all this trouble to go unnoticed." The next match, against the Cyber Lich Queen, followed a similar pattern. Despite being placed against an opponent 4 tiers above his initial ranking, Jax managed to prevail through a combination of unorthodox tactics, self-made EMP grenades that disrupted the Queen's necrotech control systems, and sheer human stubbornness. By the time he reached the Final 4, the tournament had been transformed. What began as a humiliating spectacle had become the story of the event, the primitive human who refused to be eliminated. The mood in their quarters was cautiously celebratory as they recovered from the Cyber Lich match. Dex had managed to scavenge enough parts to rebuild the exosuit one more time, while Mira's network of contacts had grown into something resembling an underground fan club. "The official betting pools have you at 12-to-1 odds now," she reported, scrolling through her datapad. "Still an underdog, but no longer considered impossible." "Who's next?" Jax asked, wincing as the medical scanner sealed a laceration on his forearm. Mira's expression grew serious. "That's the thing. There's been a change." Dex looked up from his work. "What kind of change?" "Overseer Kor has invoked the Champion's Challenge." The room fell silent. The Champion's Challenge was an ancient tournament provision, rarely used in modern times, that allowed the Overseer to personally face a competitor who had disrupted the natural order of progression. "A one-on-one death match," Jax said quietly. "Between me and Kor." Mira nodded. "Scheduled for tomorrow. No time for extensive preparations. Can we refuse?" "Only by forfeiting Earth's position in all future tournaments. Permanently." Jax closed his eyes briefly. What had started as a desperate bid for respect had become something much larger, a chance to fundamentally change how Earth was perceived by the galactic community. "Then we work with what we have," he said finally. "Dex, what's the status on the suit?" "Functional," but barely. We've cannibalized everything we can. One more major overhaul isn't possible. What about minor modifications? A slow smile spread across Dex's face. Now that, I might be able to manage. They worked through the night, making subtle adjustments to the exosuit's remaining systems, not new capabilities, but optimizations of what was left. Power distribution, response times, backup systems. Morning came too quickly. The Grand Colosseum's central arena, reserved for championship matches and special ceremonies, was filled to capacity. Representatives from every competing world were present, along with diplomatic observers and media entities from across the galaxy. As Jax prepared in the staging area, a familiar figure approached. Referee Jur, his forearms arranged in a formal configuration. "Human," the official said, mandibles clicking softly. "You have surprised many." "Including myself," Jax admitted. "The Overseer has not personally competed in 3 centuries. A pause. "His combat skills remain formidable." Jax studied the referee's compound eyes, searching for meaning behind the formal language. "Is that a warning?" "It is information. Use it as you will." Another pause. "The ritual blade is his preferred weapon. Ancient, symbolic, deadly." Before Jax could respond, Jur continued in a more official tone. "Combatants may choose one personal weapon. What is your selection?" Jax patted the exosuit. "Just this." The referee's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound Jax had come to recognize as something between surprise and amusement. "As you wish. May your adaptability serve you well." The central arena was a perfect circle of polished black stone, surrounded by tiered seating that rose in a dizzying spiral. No environmental hazards, no complex terrain, just an open space for direct combat. When Overseer Kor entered from the opposite side, the crowd fell silent. The massive alien had shed the ceremonial robes of his office, revealing a physique that belied his centuries of age. All 6 arms were uncovered, the primary pair holding an ornate blade that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "The Champion's Challenge," announced a voice that echoed throughout the arena, "is a sacred tradition dating back to the founding of the Brawl Nebula. Victory is achieved only through surrender or death." Jax felt a chill run down his spine. This was no longer about advancing in the tournament. This was Kor's attempt to eliminate the disruption Earth represented. "Begin." Kor moved with shocking speed for his size, covering half the arena in a heartbeat. The ritual blade flashed as it arced toward Jax's head, its edge humming with some form of energy field. Only the exosuit's enhanced reflexes tempted him, allowing Jax to duck beneath the swing and roll away. Even so, he felt the blade pass close enough to raise the hairs on the back of his neck. "Suit's sensors are picking up some kind of temporal distortion around that weapon," Dex warned through the comms. "Don't let it touch you. Even a graze could be fatal." "Wasn't planning on it," Jax muttered, circling warily as Kor reset his stance. The Overseer's secondary arms now held smaller blades, while the tertiary pair remained empty, likely reserved for grappling. "You have proven resilient," Kor said, voice carrying easily across the arena. "But resilience is not enough here. This is not a test to be outsmarted or a system to be hacked. This is combat in its purest form." "Then why stack the deck against me at every turn?" Jax countered, still circling. "Afraid of a fair fight?" A ripple of reaction passed through the crowd. Such direct challenge was rarely voiced in the formalized combat culture of the Colosseum. Kor's upper eyes narrowed. "You speak of fairness while exploiting loopholes and technicalities. Your victories have been irregular." "Irregular, but legitimate," Jax replied. "Unless you're admitting the rules only apply when convenient." Another ripple through the audience. Stronger this time. Kor's reputation rested on his unwavering adherence to tradition and protocol. The implication struck at the very foundation of his authority. The Overseer's response was a renewed attack, even faster and more precise than before. The ritual blade became a blur as it sliced through the air, forcing Jax into a desperate defensive pattern. "He's herding you toward the arena edge," Mira warned. "Don't let him corner you." Easier said than done. Every attempt to change direction was met with lightning-fast blade work that threatened to separate Jax from various essential body parts. The exosuit was taking damage with each near miss, power reserves dropping as systems strained to maintain the enhanced reflexes keeping him alive. This couldn't continue. Direct confrontation was suicide against an opponent with superior reach, strength, and centuries of combat experience. Jax needed to change the dynamic, to create chaos, as he had in previous matches. But how? The central arena offered no environmental systems to exploit, no terrain features to utilize. Just open space and an increasingly frustrated alien trying to kill him. Wait. Frustrated? He's angry, Jax realized aloud. Has been since I qualified. Focus, wildcard, Mira urged. No, this is important. Jax narrowly avoided another slash, the blade passing so close it sheared through part of the exosuit's shoulder plating. Every match, he's escalated because he's offended that I'm even here, that Earth dared to enter. And, Dex prompted as Jax rolled under another attack. And angry opponents make mistakes. With that realization, Jax's strategy shifted. Instead of purely defensive movements, he began incorporating taunting maneuvers, near misses that looked like errors, but were actually calculated risks. Moments where he appeared vulnerable only to slip away at the last second. "You claim to uphold tradition," he called out during one such evasion, "but you've broken your own progression protocols to force this match." Kor's attacks became subtly less precise, his movements fractionally less controlled. Silence. Human. You understand nothing of our ways. I understand enough to recognize fear, Jax countered, ducking under a horizontal slash. You're not defending tradition. You're protecting your status quo from change. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Kor's next attack overextended slightly, leaving him momentarily off balance. The Council accepted Earth's entry as a diplomatic courtesy. Jax continued, seizing the psychological advantage. But you turned it into a public humiliation because you're afraid of what happens when the hierarchy shifts. Kor's upper eyes flashed with anger. Your primitive world has contributed nothing to galactic civilization. You crawled from your planet mere decades ago, while our achievements span millennia. And yet, here I am, Jax replied, still standing despite your best efforts to ensure otherwise. The Overseer's next attack was powerful but predictable, a diagonal slash driven by emotion rather than calculated precision. Jax sidestepped, closer than before, and for the first time risked a counterattack. The exosuit's gauntlet connected with Kor's tertiary arm, the impact causing the alien to hiss in surprise. The crowd's reaction was immediate, gasps and exclamations as the previously one-sided match suddenly shifted. Suit power at 30%, Dex warned. Whatever you're planning, do it soon. Jax had one final modification, his last surprise, hidden in the right gauntlet of the exosuit. A miniaturized circuit burner, salvaged from the shuttle's emergency systems and reconfigured by Dex during their overnight session. It would deliver a targeted electromagnetic pulse directly to whatever it contacted, in this case, hopefully, Kor's armor. But to use it, he needed to get close, dangerously close to those blades. You speak of contributions, Jax said, continuing to circle. What Earth lacks in age, we make up for in adaptability. We don't rely on millennia of tradition. We innovate, we improvise, we overcome. Primitive boasting, Kor dismissed, though his stance had become more cautious after the successful counterattack. Not boasting, demonstration. With that, Jax did something completely unexpected. He charged directly at the Overseer. The move was so contrary to the established pattern that Kor hesitated for a crucial fraction of a second. By the time the ritual blade came up in defense, Jax had already committed to a reckless slide that carried him beneath the Overseer's guard. The maneuver left him directly beneath Kor, looking up at the alien's ornate armor. Before the Overseer could bring his secondary blades to bear, Jax slammed his right gauntlet against the central power node of the armor, a vulnerability Mira had identified in her analysis of previous footage. The circuit burner activated with a high-pitched whine, delivering its electromagnetic pulse directly into Kor's systems. The effect was dramatic. The armor's energy field flickered and died, its enhanced strength assistance failing instantly. Kor staggered backward, momentarily disoriented as systems he had relied on for centuries suddenly went dark. The ritual blade wavered in his grip. Jax scrambled to his feet, the exosuit's power reserves critically low after the circuit burner's activation. He wouldn't get another chance, moving with every bit of speed the failing suit could provide. He closed the distance again and delivered a precise strike to the nerve cluster at the base of Kor's primary arms, another vulnerability Mira had identified. The Overseer's grip on the ritual blade faltered, the weapon clattering to the arena floor. Before Kor could recover, Jax followed with a sweeping leg motion that took advantage of the alien's temporarily compromised balance. 800 pounds of ancient alien champion crashed to the ground with an impact that seemed to shake the entire arena. In an instant, Jax was atop him, the exosuit's remaining power channeled into holding the Overseer's primary arms immobile. The secondary and tertiary arms still posed a threat, but without the strength assistance of his armor. Kor couldn't easily dislodge the human's position. For a moment, they remained locked in this tableau, the upstart human pinning the legendary champion to the arena floor, both breathing heavily, neither willing to concede. "Yield," Jax said, voice low but carrying in the absolute silence that had fallen over the crowd. Kor's upper eyes glared with centuries of pride and fury. "Death before dishonor. Human." "There's no dishonor in recognizing when the universe changes," Jax countered, "only in refusing to change with it." Something shifted in the Overseer's gaze, not surrender, not yet, but a flicker of something new, understanding, perhaps. "You could kill me," Kor observed. "Your position allows it. The challenge permits it." "I could," Jax agreed. "But that's not why Earth came here." The silence stretched for several heartbeats longer. Then, finally, Kor spoke the ritual words. "I yield to the human challenger. The match is concluded." The arena erupted. Thousands of voices in hundreds of languages created a cacophony that threatened to overwhelm the sound dampeners. Referee Jur approached, all four arms raised in the formal verification gesture, mandibles clicking rapidly in what Jax now knew was unrestrained astonishment. "Victory to Earth," the referee announced. "The human advances to the final match." As Jax rose, offering a hand to the fallen Overseer, a gesture that caused another wave of exclamations from the crowd, he caught sight of Mira and Dex at the arena entrance. Their expressions mirrored his own mixture of disbelief and exhilaration. The fallout was immediate and far-reaching. Betting pools across the galaxy imploded as impossible odds were defeated. The Galactic Council, which had dismissed Earth's tournament entry as a diplomatic formality, now found itself forced to reassess humanity's potential. Overseer Kor, faced with the most significant defeat of his centuries-long career, had two choices: retreat into bitter recrimination or adapt to the new reality. To the surprise of many, he chose the latter. "The human victory," he announced in a formal address the following day, "has revealed inflexibility in our traditions. While we honor our ancient ways, we must acknowledge that new perspectives bring valuable disruption. The most significant change came in Earth's status. Rather than being quarantined as a developing world, Core invoked an ancient law to recognize Earth as a high-tier death world, a designation usually reserved for planets whose extreme conditions produced exceptionally resourceful species. The classification is appropriate, Core explained to a stunned council. Humans have demonstrated adaptability that could only evolve in challenging environments. Their orthodox approaches merit study, not dismissal. The final match, against a crystalline entity from the galactic core, was almost anticlimactic. Jax won through a combination of the tactics he'd developed throughout the tournament, earning Earth not only recognition but a wealth of technology exchanges and trade agreements that would accelerate human development by decades. When Jax finally returned to Earth, he found himself greeted not just as a champion but as an ambassador. The tournament footage had been broadcast across the planet, transforming overnight from an obscure alien competition to humanity's debut on the galactic stage. "What happens now?" Dex asked as they stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, looking down at the blue-green world below. "Now," Mira said with a rare smile, "everything changes." And change it did, within months. The influence of the Brawl Nebula had permeated Earth culture. Alien street food vendors appeared in major cities. Off-world memes integrated into human social media, and Jax's makeshift engineering approach became the foundation for a new school of technological development that blended human improvisation with alien precision. More significantly, the galactic community's perception shifted. Humans were no longer dismissed as primitive newcomers, but recognized as unpredictable innovators. Trade delegations arrived weekly, cultural exchanges flourished. Even referee Jur visited, his mandibles clicking appreciatively as he sampled Earth's culinary offerings. 1 year after the tournament, Jax found himself back in space, this time aboard a proper diplomatic vessel. En route to the Galactic Council's central chambers, Earth was to be formally recognized as a full member, decades ahead of the standard progression timeline. As he prepared his address, a message arrived, direct from Overseer Core himself. "Human," it read, "your victory has transformed the Brawl Nebula. Participation has increased, viewership has doubled. Most importantly, rigid hierarchies have been reconsidered." Jax smiled as he read the final lines. "The next tournament approaches. Earth's delegation will be welcomed as equals, perhaps even favorites. The galaxy watches with interest to see what chaos you bring next." Closing the message, Jax looked out at the stars streaming past the viewport. What had begun as a desperate bid for respect had become something far more significant, a reminder that sometimes the universe's most rigid traditions could be transformed by those willing to break the rules. And Earth, it seemed, was just getting started.